slightly earlier than we expected to be because we had a slight technical hitch, as you may have seen when you went over to Claire's YouTube. The video, for some unknown reason, did not decide to play for its entire length. We're very sorry about that. But what we thought we'd do is we'll come on live now, we'll have a big long chat, and then Claire will be able to upload it as soon as we finish this live session, and then it will be there ready for you to watch after we finish the end of today and then throughout all of tomorrow. So the video will come, it will arrive, we promise. It's full of lots and lots of lovely information. But for now, we have Claire joining us. I need to click the button rather than just gesture. Hello, Claire.
Hi, everybody. Hi.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you. There's people coming on in. If you're coming on in, Claire is the most amazing designer, but that also has the most beautiful yarn. Like, so I don't know. So Claire, do you create your own yarn? Where do you source your yarn from?
No, I source it from, I have some here, in fact. So you can't really see it on this camera. This is 100% merino. It's sourced from, I live in Lancashire in Northern England, and we have quite a long heritage of producing yarns in this part of the country. So I was very fortunate a few years ago to get in touch with some of these mills that are quite local to me, who produce some absolutely stunning yarns. As you may have guessed from the title of the video, I do like my chunky crochet. So I've stuck with the super chunky merino for now, and I did recently introduce the Aran yarn recently, which you use, Hannah, in your Chloe tab on top. It's beautiful. So that is a merino and silk mix in an Aran worsted weight. So yeah, I'm very lucky. Whenever I feel like going to just pick something off the shelf, there's always loads of it there for me just to help us out too.
Oh, how amazing, how amazing. So why chunky yarns? What pulls you to chunky yarns?
I think partly because I'm quite impatient. And something like the balloon sleeve bomber that we're sharing in the course, it's very easy to produce something over a weekend, and I get an idea in my head and I want to be wearing it now. So I do like a chunky yarn for that, partly because I'm always freezing cold, and they're that bit warmer. And I just love the texture that you get when you use chunky yarns. I mean, it's not just for garments and things. I've got this scarf, spots and stripes scarf that I made, which I do show in the video as well, but unfortunately you probably haven't seen that yet. And it just gives you so much texture that you can't buy clothes like this. You know that when you use the chunky yarns, they're just delicious.
Oh, and it's so on trend at the moment, isn't it? Who's the diver? What's his name?
Tom Daly.
Tom Daly.
Yeah.
His stuff is chunky, isn't it? And he makes it look so good, because I will happily admit that I steer away from chunky stuff because I don't like the way it looks on me. I always feel really uncomfortable in it. But after watching your video, and everyone needs to go and watch it once it's uploaded, I'm like, oh yeah, well that will make a difference, won't it? Like when
there's ways around it. I mean, I can understand that people, see these beautiful jumpers that Tom Daly makes and thinks, if you've got a big chest, for example, you think, oh, I wouldn't get away with that. But you can try something. If you're not sure, try an accessory first, like a scarf, or maybe hat, something like this, and just see how you get on with it, because once you've done it once, you will become addicted to it. But yeah, try an accessory, or if you're not sure if it's going to look too bulky when you're wearing it, try a cardigan, because you can wear something light. I've just got my blouse on underneath here, and you can mix up the textures nicely, and it doesn't feel as bulky as a full-on sweater with a high neck can do, and it can make you look quite fussy sometimes. So cardigans are always a good way to go, or maybe something with a deep V-neck, and it just breaks the line up of the chunky crochet.
Yeah, like I feel like these chunky items are such oh, we've got a bit of an echo here.
You're in a film.
They're such a statement pieces, aren't they? They really they really exaggerate that chunkiness, and they're such a statement pieces when you wear them that there is not much else you need to do, like you said, just something plain underneath.
You
And
make them the star of the show. Yeah,
absolutely.
and whenever, particularly the balloon sleeve bomber, you know, let me show you. There's these sleeves on this are so enormous that what is great about it is that when your hands are cold, you know, I walk around like this all the time with one hand inside the other sleeve. But whenever you're wearing these chunky pieces, whether it's a scarf or a hat or a full-on garment, people will stop you all the time in the street and say, oh, I love it. You know, where did you get it? Did you make it? Because it's not the kind of thing that you can just pick up in a shop. You know, it's obviously being designed and made, especially.
Absolutely, yeah. I remember I got a compliment on one of my sweaters I wore before, when I went for breakfast with my husband, and the waitress, you could kind of see her looking from afar, and I was like, okay, what have I done, you know? And then she finally came over and she was like, I really love your sweater. Where did you get it? And I was like, oh, well, I made it myself. And I have to say, that was the best feeling ever. It gives such a spring in your step, and you say, yes, okay, someone noticed, this is really, really nice. And that was a kind of like a, you know, DK sweater. But just imagine if you're wearing one of these beautiful chunky pieces, what a fashion statement that makes. And you might not just get one compliment, but you might get loads.
Yeah, and because the yarn is what makes it stand out. Quite often, you know, these are designed in very simple stitches, so they're great for beginners because, you know, this cardigan is purely half double crochet, but because of the yarn, it looks so textured that it's very easy for a beginner. It's very quick for a beginner, you know, and because the stitches are large, when it comes to seaming, it's quite easy to see where you need to seam as well. So certainly if you're not confident in creating garments, then chunky crochet can be very forgiving.
Yeah, I was gonna say, even maybe when you make a little mistake or something, it's very easily kind of blended into a chunky garment, isn't it? It's not as in your face.
Although I did in your video, Claire, I hadn't probably never thought about it actually, but I was thinking you talk about the gauge and you know whether you should work a gauge swatch, and like yes, you definitely should. But thinking about like the difference with the proportions of the stitches with chunky yarn, they're just that much bigger. So if you're even a tiny bit out with your gauge, it will be absolutely massive or absolutely tiny. So it's one of those things. And then, so I think maybe great for a beginner, but you absolutely have to understand the principles of gauge and how
you must do your gauge, because I think in the video I used an example of, you know, if you're a quarter of a centimetre out on that stitch, by the time you've worked your whole piece, you could have something that's 10 centimetres too big or 10 centimetres too small. So the slightest adjustment on the gauge, it's got to be accurate, and you must block it before as well, before you measure that gauge, because obviously blocking these chunky yarns, they do change quite a lot. But while we're talking about blocking, you know, it's very easy to be able to, if your gauge has been slightly out, it is very easy to adjust those stitches to make sure that when you block it, it is blocked to the right dimensions as well. So, you know, there are pros and cons to getting your gauge right.
So if you're slightly under, can you kind of fudge it, do you think?
Generally, I find that the stitches move, they're much more accommodating than if you have a lot of smaller stitches in, say, a cotton yarn or something like that.
Right, that's it. See, I'm learning so much. I'm loving today. There's lots of people, I can see lots of people are watching. Does anyone love making chunky stuff? Do they not love it? Have you tried it? Have you not? And if, you know, how have you got on with chunky yarns in garments? Because that's it. Like lots of people have made chunky blankets, haven't they? And, you know,
And that's how I started too. And like I said in the video, you know, because I'm always cold, and where I work is quite a drafty place, and so you know everyone has starts off making these wonderful blankets for their sitting room, or this with these wonderful cushions with a great texture, you know. And I just thought, why on earth are these only in my home? You know, no one else sees them, and so I thought, right, I'm going to wear them out, and I'm going to start designing cardigans and sweaters so I can wear them outside as well. So
I love it. Oh, Michelle's watching. Of Dora does. She says, I love it, but washing can be a bit tricky. Yeah, gosh, yeah. How does that work, especially with merino?
Yeah, drying them. Certain yarns, you know, if you use a wool yarn, like the King and I merino, it can be quite heavy. Now, certainly when you've washed it, you know, you've got to really be careful to get a lot of the moisture out. But drying it flat is really important because they can pull out of shape quite easily. So if you've got a flat area to lie them on, so the air can get straight through, they do dry fairly quickly. You just have to be careful how you lie them out, like any of your knitwear, really.
Yeah. Oh, lots of comments. But is it you making that comment, or is it, or is it Roxy? Is it your dog?
No, I think it might be a bit of an echo getting back into the microphone on one of the computers. Yeah, it's not coming from me. She's in the kitchen.
We're only saying that, Claire, because sometimes when Veronica and I are on calls, we can hear her dog Roxy snoring in the background. She's good.
Yeah, I was gonna say, luckily my husband doesn't snore, but we bought a dog. She's a Boston Terrier crossed with French Bulldog, and we bought her a couple of years back. And God, does she make up for my husband not snoring? Honestly,
I can hear her all the way over at my house, and we're hours away from.
Yeah.
Well, I can't say anything because I don't have a dog anymore, but unfortunately, apparently it's me that does the snoring in our house.
I'm sorry.
But that's okay because you can hear yourself.
Yeah, I'm quite happy.
Keep yourself awake. So
as long as you don't, I have woken myself up snoring before, so you know, like, as long as you don't wake yourself up doing it. Anyway, chunkier. So this, I don't know who it is. The Facebook doesn't tell us who you are. The only garments I've made using chunky yarn is ponchos.
Yeah, they would work really, really well. Really cozy, and they're a great way into trying garments as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because really, you know, you're still going to wear them as a garment. So once you know that, you know, you're happy with the shape and the texture suits you, then definitely dive in, I would say, and give it a go.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, the comments keep moving. Let's go to the next one. Oh, it's Kira. I adore chunky yarn. Just learning to gauge correctly has been a bit of a conundrum. Oh, we feel the pain. We feel.
Yeah, I would recommend, rather than doing the standard kind of 10 centimeter 4-inch, because you've got so few stitches in there, like I said in the video, which you will see eventually, they, you know, if you're ever so slightly out, you may not notice that in 4 inches. So it sounds like a pain to do, you know, a 6 or an 8-inch gauge swatch, but because your stitches are so large, actually it's probably only, it might be kind of 12 stitches by 12 rows. So I would recommend doing a larger gauge swatch just to make sure that you're accurate, and hopefully that will get you down the right road.
So would you even recommend going, like, say, because sometimes when you measure your stitches, I find sometimes with really chunky yarns that if your tension falls kind of halfway through the stitch, would you say that really matters as well? That
very definitely. When you've got, each stitch can measure up to a centimeter. It's, say if you're using a 12 millimeter hook, each, you know, if your gauge swatch is cutting that in half and you don't account for that, then you could be in trouble by the time you've done your whole piece. So I would say the larger you can go with your gauge swatch, the better, and just make sure you blocked it as well, so that it's as accurate as it can be.
Because we were talking to Raylan, weren't we, about yarns and swatches and things, and we were saying you need it big enough in any weight of yarn to do properly wiggle it, properly see what your drape's going to be like, and that's even more important, I think, in chunky yarn.
Yeah, and it may be that, you know, the first yarn you try, you're not happy with the drape, so you might want to try a larger hook, which will give you more drape. or because I'm quite a tight crocheter, and so I generally will go up a hook size anyway on any patterns that I make. So you know, if you were to try any of my patterns, you should get a very good drape on it, because I've already tested that through several hook sizes, and because my stitches are tight anyway, generally, you know, I will use a larger hook. So I quite often will use a 12mm hook, which is larger than what the yarn would recommend.
Okay. So what kind of should people think about getting?
Sorry, I missed that, Hannah.
I was going to say, what size of hook should people get, do you think?
Obviously check the pattern, because they're always different. But for a bulky yarn or a super bulky yarn, size 5 or size 6, generally a 10 or a 12mm hook is enough. What I would say is, though, like I'll say it in the video, which you'll see eventually as well, is that, you know, there's lots of different materials. The wooden ones look beautiful, but because they're so much larger, I would recommend try bamboo if you're quite new to it, because the bamboo's a little bit stickier. So, you know, you're not going to lose that stitch. Acrylic, I find, works very well for me because it's a bit slippier. Or if you want to try a metal hook, just don't go for a solid metal, because obviously by the time you get up to a 12mm, it's going to be very, very heavy, and there's going to be a lot of strain on your wrist and on your fingers. So
I'm very
go for, if you want a metal tip, then go for something with a plastic ergonomic handle. And just try to see if you can find that the aluminium tip is hollow, because that reduces the weight dramatically, and it will help your wrists and your fingers as well, so that you can crochet for longer.
Yeah, that was making me going around. I'm just ferreting around for mine. Mine are all plasticky or acrylic-y, because I have got a metal one and it's so heavy. It really hurts my wrist to do it.
Yeah, it can really strain your fingers and your knuckles as well. So the metal ones are great, because you can work very, very quickly with them. But I've found that if you get an ergonomic handle, generally they will come with the hollow metal hook as well, so that bit lighter.
I just have to check. This made me laugh so much. Stacey has just said she felt like Popeye when she was done making.
Yeah, you know, depending on your technique, I'm sure it's very good for toning your arms.
It's like a bit of a body workout, isn't it?
Certainly, with t-shirt yarn, you know, I've got a couple of patterns and bags. And when you've worked hard with the t-shirt yarn, you do end up using your shoulder and your upper arm a lot more. There's a lot more tension than with the woolen yarns.
Definitely. So what is how long does it roughly take you to make a chunky or super chunky cardigan? What would you say?
To make one, I would say the thing I love about chunky yarn is that, you know, things just whip up so quickly. So this cardigan, for example, you could make in a weekend. You know, from the shoulder down to the waist, from memory, I think it's about 34 stitches of half double crochet, and it's worked sideways, so it's worked top to bottom and across. So that's what I love about it. You know, I can have an idea one day, and by the end of the week, I'm wearing it.
The last pattern was like chain 247 stitches.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I just popped that up there because where's it gone? Just in case you haven't caught us saying in the beginning, we've had a technical hitch with the video for Claire, so we're going to upload it afterwards and get it to
yeah, I'll get it straight out there for you. I'm so sorry, I'm not sure what's happened to it.
That's all right, and what we'll do,
don't worry about it.
We'll update the link on our main page.
Yeah.
So just give us a chance, everyone, once we've finished the sessions today. We've got one more session after this one, and then we'll get it all sorted for you, and it will be there until the end of tomorrow to watch anyway, so you can watch it whenever you like.
Yeah, but hopefully we are giving you lots of information about working with chunky yarns in this chat. So even if you haven't watched the video, do pop your questions into the chat. Say hello if you're here, and
and if anyone's got any questions afterwards, they can always contact me on social media. I'm always, I mean, all of my patterns are designed for beginners, so I get a lot of questions about very simple things. So don't be worried about getting in touch with me and thinking, oh, she's going to think I'm daft, because, you know, it's great for me for inspiration to know how to change the way I write my patterns as well, because I try to write them for beginners. So the more questions I get, the better my patterns will be in the future. So send me your questions.
Fantastic.
Ashley's saying, I don't make garments more than a DK weight yarn. I think the chunky ones are beautiful, but they're just too heavy for me. And there's a couple of people saying that actually, and I think I would challenge you to have a go. I would challenge you to have
yeah, and maybe try an acrylic.
Yeah.
Because the wool can be heavy. I just love it because it's so warm and toasty. And obviously I have a room full of it, so I can just grab some off the shelf and use it. But acrylic is a lot lighter, and you know, you can buy it at a very reasonable price, or maybe a chenille yarn that would be nice and easy to work with. So maybe try that first and see how you get on with it, and then if you fall for it and become as addicted as I am, then maybe you can treat yourself to something more luxurious in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Oh gosh, this just made me, I've made a few as gifts, but I have to be careful I give them to you because they've been thrown into the washer before.
Oh, that must be heartbreaking. You put all that effort into making something.
Oh gosh. I know if I give anything to anyone, regardless of what it is, I always give care instructions.
Oh yeah.
Whereas like, do not put this in the washing machine and wash it only, and they look at me like, what? Oh, and someone's saying I haven't been brave enough to make any garments yet. Well, hopefully you will after this weekend.
Oh yeah, you've got everything you need after the next couple of days. No excuses.
Haven't asked us. What were my other notes? I
seem to be disappearing into the dark. Shall I see if I can get
I am really right.
Is that better? I can see you all again now.
That's it.
The thing I picked up as well on the thing that I'd never thought of before was the seaming of the chunky yarn, of how important it is to get your seams, like, not, you didn't say like loose, but just make sure they're not chunky.
Yeah. Well, you know, you think that the material, because crochet is double layered compared to knitting, it's quite thick anyway. And so you have to be quite careful in how you seam them, just because you could end up with these great big lines at your shoulders, which, you know, sometimes I've seen some on Instagram that look great, where people have put the seams on the outside in a contrasting colour and really made a feature of it. And I am quite tempted to do that myself in some designs in the future. But usually backstitch works quite well rather than a single crochet type seam, which I would use on a finer yarn garment. Backstitch works very well, or a kind of mattress stitch that you would use with knitting. It's just something that's a bit flatter.
We've talked about that, haven't we? Oh, it's being weird. Sorry, everyone. We talked about mattress stitch earlier, didn't we?
Yeah.
Love it.
I think that would be a great technique to use with chunky yarns as well, wouldn't it? Yeah, that would really give you that nice flat join. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I've had a comment before saying that they're afraid to try chunky yarns because they're afraid that it won't fit them right. But I think chunky yarns are very, very good for the speed, aren't they? So even if it maybe doesn't fit quite well at the start, it's easy to frog back and remake because
yeah, and I would say as well, a lot of the designs that you see out there are quite boxy shapes. So if it's slightly out, you know, you could drop a couple of stitches as you're making it if you're not happy with the fit. But it goes back to, like we said before, you know, the gauge is really important. So as long as you've got your gauge right and you're happy with the gauge, then it will fit you. I mean, any designer who has thought about this properly, you know, will have checked the gauge again and again and again, and will have tried different hook sizes to make sure that the drape is the way that they want it. And I think I say in the video, you know, that it's something that I will do regularly. You can look for patterns that have quite tall stitches, so that will give you a better drape and possibly help with the fit as well if you're a bit concerned that it might feel a bit stiff. Because the balloon sleeve bomber that I'm wearing today is half double crochet, And I used that specifically because I wanted this to look more like a jacket rather than a very flowy summer type cardigan. And because the sleeves are so dramatic, I needed a stiffer fabric in there. So I used a shorter stitch for that. But because I was using a shorter stitch, I used a larger hook, which gave me larger stitches and a bigger gauge to get the drape right. So, you know, designers will have spent a long time playing around with different stitches and different hooks to get the look that they know that you will want. So as long as it's a designer you trust and you know that you can get your gauge right, you'll be fine.
Yeah, yeah. And on that, someone, Kira has said, can you possibly tag all of the designers from this weekend on Facebook for us to follow? Yes, definitely.
Oh, that's great to know.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kira.
Yeah, Veronica and I will do a post, shall we? And we'll name everyone, and then you can go and find them and follow them, because the reason we invited all of the designers that we did, I think we've already said it, is that we trust them. We know them, we trust them. We know that they have brilliant patterns and such experience and knowledge. And that counts for so much, doesn't it, when you're a maker?
Yeah, and I think as well, because, you know, this is such a lovely group of designers, that if someone sends us a question and we're not entirely sure of the answer, we get in touch with somebody else or put them in touch with the specialist for that area and say, you know, let me help you find the answer to your question. If I can't answer it, I know someone who can.
Yeah, anything to do with Kiana,
That's it, yeah.
Definitely. Did you have any more questions come through, Veronica?
Not at the moment. I've got one to how to keep track of stitches and rows. I think that was more of a general questions, but I suppose we can just touch up on it when it comes to chunky yarns. Any tips and tricks?
Yeah, and it's the same, like you say, as any project really. If you've got stitch markers, I mean, it's easier to see the individual stitches, to count them if you do lose count. But stitch markers are always handy.
Yeah, brilliant.
Definitely. Although I have a weird version to stitch markers. I've always had it, but I don't like using stitch markers. Do you have to
I must admit, I use them a lot more in knitting projects than I do in crochet. I find it a lot easier to count my stitches in crochet.
Do they fit all right around the chunky yarn? Mine are so tiny. I don't know
Yeah.
how to click in properly.
I've never found it an issue. I mean, I just have the standard, the little plastic ones, you know, that look like safety pins. They seem okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
I suppose you might have a little trouble with like the little lobster claw type stitch
That's what I was
markers.
thinking, yeah.
But yeah, I think the bigger plastic ones will be completely
Yeah.
fine. Yeah. Oh, failing that, you can just grab a scrap piece of yarn, can't we?
Yeah.
And just pop it
Yeah,
in your
that's a
stitch.
great
You know,
idea,
you can
Veronica.
even really tie really loose knots so you don't lose that piece of yarn, and yeah, just go from there. We don't have to spend extra money on special stitch markers.
Yeah, that's something I'm going to try next time. We've all
There we
got
go.
little spare bits of yarn.
I remembered so I feel like a complete newbie with all of this chunky yarn stuff. I feel like everyone in the chat. So don't, you know, and this is another thing from this weekend to show that we don't know everything either. As designers, if it's something that we've not encountered, of course we're not going to know. Most of us are self-taught and we're just gathering information as we go along. So we're all the same. My question was about weaving and ends. What are your top tips? Because they're so bit like, do you buy special needles? Do you use your hook? How
No,
best
no.
do it?
You can, I mean, it depends where it is, I suppose. If you're going to seam that piece, you can include it in the seam. But no, just a normal tapestry needle will generally work. And because the stitches are quite large, I find it quite easy to be able to wrap the ends around the way that the stitch works, and you can follow the pattern of the stitch. So generally they disappear very easily. Just make sure, what I would say is, because the stitches are quite large, make sure you probably need a longer end to weave in, to make sure that you can weave it across, say, 5-6 stitches, just so it doesn't come loose, particularly if you're going to have a go with an acrylic yarn or something that's a bit slippery. Make sure you've got a long end.
So I think with a smaller weight yarn, if it pops out, if your tail pops out of a couple of stitches, you're okay. But if it pops out of a couple of chunky stitches, you could be in trouble, couldn't you?
Yeah, I would say maybe leave an end that's twice as long as you would with a DK or a worsted weight yarn, just to be on the safe side.
Yeah.
And I suppose these soft merino yarns that like the cardigan you're wearing, they do get a little bit grippy, don't they?
Yeah, they felt quite nicely as well as you wear
when you
them.
really
They
work
felt
the
more and
end
more.
in, they do grip quite well, yeah.
Oh, there's a couple of people saying about stitch markers. This is why it's wonderful to have people here. They've got Clover brand of jumbo locking stitch markers specifically for chunky yarns.
Fantastic.
Oh, I didn't know that. I might have to have a look at that.
So, yeah. There we are. No matter whether crochet. Oh, I use stitch markers.
Thank you, Julia.
I do not, honestly, even when I'm filming tutorials, I say like I don't like stitch markers, but I'm going to use them because I'm meant to.
Well, maybe you can compromise and use Veronica's idea of using spray yarn.
Yarn instead. Oh, there's someone asking, Veronica, can you share what you are wearing, please? It is gorgeous.
Thank you very much. It's currently nameless, homeless cardigan.
Oh, that makes it sound sad and lonely. It's beautiful.
Yeah, so I finished it a while ago, and I have typed up the size that I am wearing. But this cardigan has been in a bit of a naughty corner because I don't know whether you can see the stitch pattern. It repeats over 6 stitches, and what I found when I was trying to grade it, that for the certain sizes you have to kind of break through the middle of the stitch pattern, which makes grading it a little bit tricky. So I've put the pattern into a naughty corner at the moment, and it's having a timeout, and when I feel that it's stopped being naughty, I will get back to it and get it released, and it will be available.
Well, now you can see that we all love it, so you should get out there.
Yeah, well, we made Hannah promise that she's gonna release her pink sweater. We made her promise live and commit to it. So
Right.
yeah, maybe
I've got 2 weeks and you've got 2 weeks.
yeah, maybe I might need to make a promise to release this one. Yeah.
Oh, Joyce has said, poor naughty, poor naughty sweater.
I do like that
love
comment
it.
about bobby pins.
Oh,
Bobby
yeah.
pins work great on chunky yarn as stitch markers. I wouldn't have thought of that. That's a really good idea.
That's a great idea. I love this. There's so much to share, isn't there? So much to share from everyone. Oh,
Absolutely.
I think that was it. I'm just checking my list as well.
Yeah. So while you
as well. Sorry, go on. You go.
just while you're checking your list, Hannah, let's just remind people about our little giveaway still going on. So we've got the QR codes up in a corner. So if you scan that one, you'll be taken to a Google form to fill out. So pop your email address on there to be in with a chance to win a $40 gift card from We Crochet. You can go on a little shopping spree, grab yourself chunky hooks if you want to give chunky project a go, grab yourself stitch markers or whatever else you need to get ready to tackle your first chunky project from maybe a pattern that Claire's wearing, because it's really beautiful. Those big balloon sleeves are amazing.
Oh yeah, and do tag us. We'd love to see them.
And absolutely. And even if you don't win the gift cards, we still have got a 15% off code, which is Garment15 for We Crochet website, which is crochet.com, just simple crochet.com. So head over there, have a look what those guys have got on their amazing website.
They've got
and use the
yarns as well, actually, haven't they?
Yeah, they do. So yeah, have a look what they got, and you can take advantage of that code until the end of 27th of March, so the end of Monday. So that's when the code expires. So have a look at that. And we've got some comments coming in.
And those of us without a way to scan enter as well. Yes. So in the comments, I have put this is the form that you need to go to, and we've said as well, if you sign up to Veronica and I's lists, then we will be sharing it as well. So come and grab it from us. You can definitely enter. We would love you to.
Yep, definitely.
Kira is asking, where's your favourite place to purchase chunky yarn online? Well, Claire, where do you ship to? How far do you ship?
I ship worldwide, so
Okay.
for me, I'm really lucky that on these shelves behind me, I have kilos of super chunky yarn that I can just go and help myself to. But if you want to give yourself a trial on something less expensive, then Love Crafts is very good. They have a lot of different brands out there. King Cole, they do a good chunky acrylic yarn. There's all kinds of brands really. James C. Brett, they do a good one. So yeah, Love Crafts is a good place to start. Or if you're in the US, you probably have access more to a local yarn store. So pop in there, have a word with the people who work there, and they'll be able to advise you on what's good for a beginner to work with. And they'll probably have access to a lot of patterns as well that they can advise you on.
So sorry. There we go. I was in Florida earlier this year, Claire, and I've never been there before, and I was taken on a yarn store shopping spree. I got taken to like 4 different yarn stores, and oh my goodness, we do not have anything like that.
No, I'm so envious. I hear these fantastic stories of people who just pop to their local store, and it must be wonderful to chat to people who are so knowledgeable about the yarns and the patterns that will work with them. It just sounds like my idea of heaven.
Pile of yarn. I was like, this is amazing.
I hope you had a big suitcase.
No, unfortunately, but I did consider buying an extra bag and putting. No, it's fine. It's fine. Oh, Cindy's asking what the code is again. Here it is. It's Garment.
Here it is.
Garment 15 for 15% off on crochet.com. We crochet.
Yeah. But we mentioned earlier that Claire, you've got some chunky yarns that people can purchase.
Yeah. So if you pop over to kingandI.shop, then you can see those in there. And I have the lighter weight Aran worsted as well, which is merino and silk that Hannah created her beautiful Chloe tabard top from. So check out Hannah's pattern,
which I gave to my niece Chloe, and I now regret because I really wanted it myself. It turned out so nicely, but I told my sister-in-law, I was like, right, it's really lovely yarn. Don't mess it up. And she hasn't. She's taken beautiful care of it. It's well looked after.
Yeah, it does wash well. You can put it in the machine. I know people are scared sometimes with luxury fibres, aren't they? But I wouldn't want to sell it if I didn't think that you couldn't maintain it. So as long as it goes in on a cold wool cycle, it's fine and just right flat.
Yeah, perfect.
Brilliant.
I should put the code back up for everyone because the next video is no, that's the wrong one. Sorry, everyone. The next video and the last video for today is starting very soon, and it's gauge. I know there's lots of people already signed up for this one, and honestly, it's the best explanation of gauge and tension I think you will ever find. Sarah is absolutely amazing. So pop on that link and you'll find the YouTube link for Sarah's channel, and it will play in just about 5 minutes time. But yeah, thank you ever so much for joining us, everyone. Thank you, Claire, so much.
Thank you, everyone. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Claire, we'll get the video sorted.
We'll get the video up and running in the next half an hour, hopefully.
Perfect. And we'll get the link updated on the page so that everyone can go and watch it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So see you again for our last live of the day in half an hour or so.
That's right. Yeah.
I need to turn some lights on.
Yeah, I've got like everything going, so my electric bill's going like this.
Yeah, perfect. Lovely. Thank you ever so much again, Claire.
Thank you.